I'm not surprised that this exists. And I think we know of one that we uncovered, and the same party in India that you mentioned, I don't know them well, but I think they use another one we don't know of. The demon is out of the box and immediately it's going to be replaced by some other company. Right now, there's some person in India, in the US, in Germany, who says, okay, there's a business there and there's clients, so these guys are done. There's an opportunity and they're going to build, they're going to call it Pegasus or Pegasus, and it's going to be the same thing. If we have a big enough computer that has access to all of those neurons, you can sit there and have a conversation entirely, and we will know before you say it, what you're about to say, before you're thinking about what you think. So much so that we can actually predict your actions, predict your thoughts, visualize them, show a movie what you're thinking about right now, or if you're asleep, show your dreams.
Thank you for joining the Change I Am Possible, which is India's first future tech podcast. And today I'm delighted and honored to have with me Mr. Cerf Moran, who's a professor of neuroscience and business at Kellogg School of Management and the Alfred P. Sloan Professor at the American Film Institute. Mr. Moran holds a PhD in neuroscience, an MA in philosophy, and a BSc in physics. His research uses neuroscience to understand the underlying mechanism of a psychology, emotion, decision-making, and dreams. He holds multiple patents, and his work has been published in academic journals such as Nature and some of the top global media house and publications. Prior to his academic career, he worked as a hacker in the cybersecurity industry and currently is on the board of a number of tech companies and is also the co-founder of Think Alike and BQ. So welcome to the show. It's a complete pleasure and honor to have you on the show. I've seen various videos of yours and it's always inspiring the way that you pushing the limits of neuroscience and neurotechnology. So let's start with hacking, because your career has started with hacking. Now today we have been catapulted into the digital world, and thanks to COVID, and we are getting into a world which is going to be more and more automated. So as a hacker, what do you think is going to be the role of cybersecurity, with a world which is going to be increasingly digitized?
First of all, thank you for the nice introduction and for having me on this podcast. It's a pleasure. I'll give you the kind of two extremes to this question. I have a very, very positive and a very, very negative. As a former hacker, and even now as a person who is still involved to an extent in the world of cybersecurity, I would say that cybersecurity and hacking is the biggest threat to the world right now. It encapsulates in it all the other threats. So you're worried about nuclear war. Still to date, a nuclear missile is launched by pressing buttons and by controlling it remotely, which means that if someone hacks into the right system, a nuclear war is like a secondary outcome. Pretty much everything that we have in this world is controlled digitally. There are very few things that are mechanical or that are offline entirely, which means that everything is connected. It means that everything can be hacked. And it's true for weapons, to a defibrillator, to chip that control the brain, everything. And in that sense, I feel that that's the biggest risk of the world right now. And I can tell you that even when I was fully working as a hacker, the threat was already so massive back then. It's been years ago. So I imagine it's even bigger. I'd say as a side note, that actually there's a risk that is less kind of obvious to people. That is the risk of just full transparency. It sounds unintuitive. Right now, let's say my friends at Google that spend a lot of time protecting their Gmail account, or your Gmail account in that sense, they're worried about someone hacking into a single account. So you're very worried, Eddie, that someone's going to hack into your Gmail account and read all your email and maybe get access to your personal banking account. That's about it. What my friends are spending time doing is protecting Gmail's server, because for the same effort, a person can hack into one account and or they can hack into the server and then they get all the many millions or billions of accounts that Gmail have. It's the same effort, just have to hack into a computer. And I think the world is not ready for a hack of that level. In 2008, when someone basically started rigging the US banking system and all the banks collapsed, there was this sentence that everyone said, the banks were too big to fail. That was the slogan of 2008. If the banks are too big to fail, what happens if they fail? The economy is going to crash and so on. I think the real too big to fail is our online systems. If someone hacks into Gmail, everyone's Gmail, and just publishes a dump of like a zip file with everyone's Gmail account, everyone's going to be in trouble. Legal battles between people that are recorded between lawyers on Gmail will become transparent. Political and diplomatical affairs that people don't know about are going to be public. Suddenly, the Prime Minister of India will know exactly what the President of France thinks about him, because at some point it was shared over an email, and they can maintain some privacy by not saying it, but now it's going to be public. Everyone's going to have to respond to that. The amount of patents that's going to be revoked because they're all there. So if someone just one day, one time, for 1 minute hacks into Gmail and dumps it, it won't just end there. It will be a ripple effect. It will be much bigger than the 2008 collapse. So this was a long answer to your intro question. I'll give you the controversial part that we can immediately launch the next questions if you want, which is, with that in mind, I'm still a big supporter and lover of technology, and prefer technology to brains almost on every domain. Meaning, if you ask me if I prefer my car to be a self-driving car versus a human driving car, I would sign right away on a self-driving. If you ask me if I prefer my doctor to be a human versus a machine, I would sign up on machine right away. And if you ask me if I want the nuclear codes of the US to be controlled by a human or a machine, I would say a machine. So in that sense, with all the hacking and all, I still think that humans are much worse in terms of their flaws and their hackable levels. So I think I would always choose computers, even though they can be hacked too.
Right. So obviously your statement is quite controversial, and it's not going to go down well with the larger audience. But yeah, I completely endorse your view on the way things are going. And you mentioned something, that full transparency. There's obviously a technology which is blockchain, which advocates full transparency. But then the world, you said, is not ready for it. The banking industry, we've been functioning for the longest time in an extremely traditional way, in a very opaque, closed manner. Now, these technologies are so transformational that it advocates, or it will nudge the traditional industries to throw away their traditional functioning and adopt the new. The new is where it's extremely open, where it's a collective intelligence, where it's benefits for all, financial inclusivity and all. So I don't really know whether people are like really open for that. But yes, and you mentioned that, what if somebody hacks Gmail? Well, that could be, I shudder the thought of something like that, because, if and when somebody is able to breach Google and Gmail account, what could open up could be maybe unfathomable. Since we are in subject of cybersecurity, at least here in India, globally also, there's this project Pegasus, which is wreaking havoc, at least here in my country, and it comes from your country, Israel, NSO. So do you have a view about that? Because it is creating quite a lot of disturbance, at least here in our country, because BJP, which happens to be a ruling party over here, has been in the party for 2 terms, and as a political party, they are extremely polarizing, and their mandate is divide and rule, with religion being their main this thing. And it seems they are leveraging Pegasus spyware to snoop onto not just the opposition party leader, which is Rahul Gandhi, but some of the biggest journalists. And so is this the way forward? Because I believe that this is just the start. What could happen when technology kind of like grows beyond our understanding or grasp, could go even more bonkers? Would you like to share views on that?
So it's simple. It's bad. It's bad. It's destroying democracy. It's a slippery slope towards just negative all around. In Israel, as much as I follow the news, the country is embarrassed by that more and more, and they're starting to close in on that. So as soon as it became clear that it wasn't just a commercial thing, but it actually leaks into diplomatic, and basically it's a weapon that's just like being sold. It's just because it's framed as a security software, you can get by with selling weapon to other people. I think that the Israel military and defense leaders realized that it crossed a line, and now they're starting to close in on that. And there's now mini investigation leading to more concrete investigation. I think it will end up badly for NSO. And in that sense, the one mushroom that's called NSO is going to be kind of pruned. It won't matter that much because the demon is out of the box, and immediately it's going to be replaced by some other company. Right now, there's some person in India, in the US, in Germany, who says, okay, there's business there and there's clients. So these guys are down. There's an opportunity, and they're going to call it Pegasus or Pegasus, and it's going to be the same thing. Here's what I'll say that is a little bit kind of expected, I think, not obvious, like me saying that it's bad and that I'm sure it's. I'm not surprised that this exists, and I think we know of one that we uncovered, and the same party in India that you mentioned. I don't know them well, but I think they use another one that we don't know of. So. There's like every now and then we.
Would you like to open that up on the conversation?
So I'll give you a concrete example that would be clear. When I moved from Israel to the US 15 years ago, took a position in a school and left my cyber world and moved to the US. A few years after, there was a liberal kind of control of the country. Obama was elected. Things seemed to be leaning left and liberal, and right into his, I think, fifth year as president, the story of Edward Snowden was exposed. The story that basically said that kind of group in the US intelligence, the NSA, was basically spying on Americans. It's against the Constitution. It's illegal. It's not how it's supposed to be. One whistleblower, Edward Snowden, exposed that. He was in big trouble for just basically exposing what had happened, so much so that he had to escape the country and lives in Hong Kong, in Russia. So he's kept Hong Kong and moved to Russia. That's why it basically is in exile. This story was shocking to everyone and had rippling effect. To me, it wasn't shocking at all. I assumed from the day I landed in the US that the US intelligence spies internally on people. To me, the only surprise here was people were surprised. I said, really? You didn't think that the US government, who is so interested in like everything, would do that? But they said, but it's against the law, it's not the Constitution. But I said, yeah, but all countries play a double-edged sword where they say publicly, we'll never do that and it's a bad idea. And then they do that. And it was exposed. Everyone played their role. Snowden played the role of a whistleblower. And the President Obama said, this is a really, really bad thing that he exposed. I'm embarrassed by that. It will never happen again. And immediately, secretly told his people, do it, just call it Pegasus or Megasus and so on. He said, like, publicly, I have to say that it's a bad idea to spy on people and we don't do that. And in private, he told his FBI officers, okay, but we need to find terrorists. And they have ways to justify that. And even though he was a liberal president and he was very much publicly against that, I'm going to, if right now as we speak, there isn't a program in the US that does exactly the same thing, just under a different name. And same in India and same in Israel and in most kind of advanced technological countries, because people usually have this thing where they publicly say, I am all about privacy and protection of individuals and so on. And secretly they ask Apple to unlock the phones of people they think are terrorists or spy on other parties. This happened in the US in the last presidency. That's the lay of the land, which is bad. I don't want it, but I think it's happening. My assumption, and the assumption I would make your audience live with, is that there are people who are trying very, very kind of aggressively to get their data information, and they shouldn't count on someone else protecting them. They should also protect themselves.
From your perspective, are we going into a world which is complete surveillance? What would you have to say for something like that?
So we're in, yes, I think we're already there. But I think that it's a tension, it's a battle. So on the one end, it's like on the one end, governments, parties, terror organizations, they're all in the same category for that sense. companies that are big, are with nations on trying to spy on other companies and nations, they're in the mission of getting more data from you and spying on you and putting more cameras and more devices that log your keystroke and so on. And other companies and other people are in the business of fighting that, finding ways to block things, block the ads and block the cookies that they are trying to spy on you. And that tension is going to continuously go on, and it's always going to be like you're going to one day be on that side, one day be on the other side. So it's going to be forever. So the same way, at some point when I was younger, that's maybe dating me, viruses on computers started. One day there was a thing called a virus. No one knew that. Like in 1980, there wasn't the idea. Someone created a virus. We don't know who created the first virus, but suddenly there was a virus. And immediately, we all as kids learned that there's something bad that could happen if you copy a software that's going to make your computer. And then another company came with antivirus. Some say that the same company created both because it's a business idea. But then another virus came and another virus. And since then, now it's kind of part of our life. We have every couple of days an antivirus update because every couple of days there's a new virus. That's the life we live in. And we, as long as we keep up with that, one day the virus is ahead and then we have a problem and it's not as the antivirus is ahead. The same thing is going on our privacy. There's going to be more cameras looking to track you. There's going to be more software that keeps your data. There are going to be more governments who try their best to eavesdrop on your phone. And there are going to be more tools to block the camera from looking at you, to know where they are. There's going to be more software to actually block data sharing and so on. And there's going to be more tools to stop governments from hacking into your thing. That's the life we're going to live in. It's going to always be this tension, and we're going to always live in between.
Right. Yeah, I guess there's a larger community which is being shaping up, and people who are understanding, and thanks to internet, because internet is something which is given, it's almost like, knowledge which is there, free, available for all, you could be sitting in the urban area or the rural area. If you have the desire and intent, and if you have, you can look around and find that what's right and wrong in the world and try to correct it by building a community. But there is capitalism, which has created this profit at all cost system. And it's very difficult to get away from that. We are at the cusp of the greatest technological transition. It's not just the technology that we all talk about, AI, but it's all the other layers around it. It's AR, VR, MR, blockchain, IoT, synthetic biology, and so on and so forth. And all of these are still in its nascent stage. And once it kind of like really grows, I don't really know what's going to do to mankind. So there's one side of me which kind of advocates technology and how it can change life. And there's one side of me which is totally scared on how technology can completely disrupt mankind, just because I'm vested in AR, VR right now. So far it's been something which has been on a very, very nascent stage. It's a bulky hardware, it's expensive and so on and so forth. But I think in another maybe couple of years, maybe in this decade itself, there'll be glasses maybe as light as this, with this form factor, which will have inside-outside tracking. What I mean by that is that it'll be able to look into my eyes, what I'm looking at and outside. And once we get into that world, it gets very scary that, earlier with social media, it's your tweets or likes and stuff, those could be manipulated. But once you have your entire data of where you're looking at with inside outside tracking, the world is getting quite funky now. The social media is already grown into a monster. It's been used to manipulate elections. Now you are doing neuroscience for business, and you advocate neuromarketing. Would you like to address the pros and cons? Because here with social media itself, we have created a way to control the larger audience. What happens when we are able to manipulate someone at the cognitive level?
First, I would say there is a privilege that I have. I'm not sure how old you are, that I think the audience maybe doesn't have, which is I was born into a world with no computers at the level of personal computers at home, and grew up with it. So they became more and more, which means that I had access to a simplified computer. I knew how just the computer works. And then when a hard drive was invented, I saw how how do I add to that and how they work. And I had enough they advanced slow enough in my time and step by step that I got to see all the steps and I now understand computers deeply. And in that sense, I think that every generation that's kind of piling up, they miss a lot of how things work. And a lot of things look like magic, kind of like, of course, files can be copied. And in that sense, it's easier to hack into a person who relies on other systems below. Like you kind of say, well, I'm not going to write a code to copy files. For that, I'm just going to write a line copy file. Like I assume that this is working. And the deeper you can get in understanding how the systems work, you can find flaws that are at the root of the system. And these kind of trickle down into a lot of troubling hacks. So all the hacks that we talk about in the last couple of years, Pegasus or the famous nuclear reactor, and they involve a person from our generation who hacked not into the new software of Facebook. They hacked into the way by which the system copies a file from one place to another. And you have to have some complexity of understanding of computers to do that. The young generation doesn't have it. So they're hackable because they're rely on a lot of kind of building blocks that they never touched and never looked at. So in a way, being old here is useful because it gives some perspective that's useful, that's useful to how it works. The second point that you made that I want to amplify, I agree with you 100%, is that it's kind of the roots of the challenges are not computer science or cybersecurity, they're capitalism. It's a growing problem, right? Like in one country, capitalism is an issue. The US is where I'm staying right now. It leads to ripping of the society apart because the haves versus the have-nots are not just like financially different. They watch different TV shows, talk to different people, get different realities. It's only spiraling. And because if you're, let's say, on the correct side of history when it comes to vaccines, which is taking them, because you read the right news that says they're safe and you should use them. Now you're not just like, okay, fine, I'm getting the news that says it's great, you're getting this, it's bad. I'm also going to take the vaccine, so I'm going to survive and you're going to die. So the outcome of the last year, if we needed one as like an evidence, is that reading different news isn't just like, fine, you look at this, I look at this, you're going to die, I'm going to survive. So in 5 years, we're going to have more people alive from the community that read the news than there wasn't. And this is like evolution at this point, right? Like we're going to have more kids. So one side takes over evolutionary by not just getting the facts, but getting basically to survive. So capitalism isn't just kind of fine, like you believe that money should be taxed this way, and I believe it's really like at the end of the day, or at the core of it, like two different schools of reality. And that's, I think, a risky place to be in. The one thing I would say, and that's going to be the concluding thing on the first one that I'm going to talk about neuromarketing, which you asked me about, is that it's not new. I think that there's kind of a new paradigm in a way that you hear in podcasts and in kind of news rooms as if something new happened here that we didn't see before. It's not that new. It's been there before. It's different technology, it's different kind of platform. The scales are much bigger, so that's a big difference and so on. But there isn't anything that Unilever didn't know about how to change people's minds that suddenly Facebook discovered. They're using the same technology. Once you are addicted to this, now addicted to that. Marketing is the old-fashioned version 1 of social media that tries to put items in your kind of orbit and make sure you buy more of this cereal than that cereal. It's the same thing, just the scales are bigger and the testing is much more individualized. So before that, we can kind of test 2 options and you either fell in category 1 or category 2. Now you can test on Eddie and say, is Eddie at 8 a.m. different than Eddie at noon? And if so, we're going to put the Eddie at 8 that's different than noon. So the scale of technology made it totally kind of different. So neuromarketing, asking about it, that's now kind of, from big ideas to a very tangible thing. If the audience doesn't know, neuromarketing is the one name out of 2. The other one is consumer neuroscience that was given to a field that exists for about 7 years. And this field is all about using neuroscience to understand consumers. So instead of asking them questions like, hey, will you buy the thing on the left or the thing on the right? You have them look at the item and you look at their brain instead, and you figure out from their brain whether they're going to buy the left or the right one. That's kind of the bulk of it. It has extension to how do we price products, what message will most resonate with that person, how do we make them click more. But everything you can think about marketing is, in a way, just approached now through the lens of the brain rather than through the lens of a survey or inspection or just observations. You kind of say, let's bring the person with their brain to a room and have this brain make decisions, and we're going to look at the brain while it makes decisions and try to predict what's going to happen next. It's a field that is growing in popularity. It's a field that's still kind of at its birth, so it still has to prove to others like that it's working well. Because of that, the main clients of this field are the big companies who can afford to do the regular things plus. So Facebook, Amazon, Google, in the tech world, Procter & Gamble, Unilever, those companies in the consumer packaged goods world, Ferrari, Ford, GM in the auto industry world, and Viacom, Paramount, Universal, those companies in the world of entertainment. I gave you just big industries. Companies that you know of are using that. Companies that are small, like a mom and pop shop somewhere or a lawyer office with 4 lawyers, they don't think about it right now. If they do marketing, it's still putting a poster on a bench or calling people and asking them to do it, or word of mouth. That's the level because it's expensive and unclear. The pros first. It's a higher accuracy. So if you're in the business of knowing whether your customers are going to buy this product, and it's a $1 billion campaign that you're launching, and predicting that people are going to buy it with 59% accuracy or 58% accuracy could amount to millions of dollars, then definitely use neuroscience, because neuroscience will give you the 1% extra. It will give you something in addition to whatever people can give you by asking them. So you ask, will you do that? They're going to say yes, but maybe in their mind they say, I'm not sure. Their brain's going to tell you, I'm not sure. So you will know. So if you're in the business of many $1 million campaigns and every percent increment on knowledge is critical, neuroscience is the way to go. Don't hesitate. Most people are not there. And if you're not there, then it's not the way to go, because it gives you incremental of percent on most things. And for that percent, you pay a lot more money, a lot more time, and you have new knowledge that you don't have right now in-house, and neuroscientists that you're working with and so on. So that's the balance. If you're Amazon, it's definitely worth. The 1% for Amazon could be, the economy of like India. The non-business pros and cons is that it's, again, looking into your brain, getting access to your thoughts. No one likes that as people. At the other end of that is customers love that, right? Customers like Facebook, they would love to have access to your thoughts and ideas. So depends on who you are. If you're Google, you love that. If you're a user of Google, you probably don't.
Thank you for really, explaining it so nicely. Yeah. So the advertising industry, it's traditionally it started with print, then it went to radio, and then it went to televisions, and now it's gone to social media. Till the time it was the traditional, which is, print, your radio and your television. It was something which was not interactive. It was very passive. It's something with a message as a director or a brand. I just give you the messaging. With social media, what has happened that it started nudging you. It started manipulating you. Now with neuroscience, neurotechnology, and then we are getting into the world of brain-computer interfaces, which are just about to open up. And there are some of the leading companies, leading names in the world, like Elon Musk building Neuralink. There's Kernel, which is Brian Johnson is building. And there's so many others who have gone. DARPA has been fronting it in a big way. A brain-computer interface, I endorse it because I think it's a logical step to mankind, because we have always been augmenting ourselves throughout history. Like ladies used to augment themselves with what the hair color, breast implant. Men used to additional endowment or so on and so forth. Elon Musk puts it that there is a technological exponential growth. And to face it, the only way for us to be relevant in that world would be to augment ourselves. And that's the reason he talks about brain-computer interface. There is Yuval Noah Harari, who claims that humans are going to be hackable. So yes, I've put in a whole lot of things together at this point in time. But What are your views on this future? This future where it's not going to be completely nice. What would be your narrative as a neuroscientist? What would you say?
So first, full disclosure, I'm involved with the people you mentioned and these projects. So my lens is colored by that, but I'm actually not on their camp. So I think that the people you mentioned, they have an agenda and a camp and marketing material that they publish to convince you with things. And I'm interested in the technology, but not on the same camp on necessarily what they aim. So for instance, when Brian Johnson and Elon Musk tell you that we're going to need to have a neural implant in our brain to survive because the world is getting complicated and so on, there's truth to what they say, but we should remember that there are businessmen who are interested in getting you to put this neural implant. So it's a business marketing campaign. Like Elon Musk goes and says, like, we need to have this thing because AI is going to come to get us. It's an hypothesis that AI is going to come to get us. And it plays well into the idea that he wants, which is to put neural implants in people's brains. So, and I'm torn on that. So I see the benefit, but I also see the negative side, which I think is in that context, because you seem to like it, I'll take the side of why it's bad. Even though I'll say right away, I have positive negative. An approach that we should be aware of is that instead of most of those people aiming and kind of transparently saying, this is what we want to get to, let's do that, they're usually taking a way that is easier to digest first, and the big bite comes next. Meaning, for instance, I'm kind of now piling on Elon Musk, but it's no different than what Google is doing, what DARPA is doing. They say, we will never be able to run up with a project that says we want to put neural implants in your brain and basically access your thought. That's not going to fly. People are going to. So let's say that we want to solve a disease and cure some problem, and that's what we're building the neural implant, and we're actually going to do that. So the byproduct of what they want is actually what we want, which is to, in that case, cure Alzheimer. Let's cure Alzheimer. Let's build a chip that you put in your brain because it's going to cure Alzheimer. And once we get that, by the way, we can give you like a backdoor into one more thing. And in that sense, that's where I'm taking the opposite side of what I think you were suggesting and what I think all of those people suggest, which is it's just great. The way we're going to buy it as customers is by seeing the great side, and we're going to market the greatness, and we're going to mostly be made aware of the saliency of the greatness, and it's going to be masked that there's some problem. It's going to be like the ads for pharmaceuticals where you see kind of, this will give you the best erection of your life. And then kind of in the last minute, it's like, if this makes you die, vomit, throw up, or so on, please call a doctor. And that's like hidden. I'll be this note on the kind of greatness. I'll say that what you're going to see one day is a commercial on TV that says, we now have a cure for Alzheimer. Come to the offices of Neuralink or Kernel or DARPA's kind of whatever company is going to spin off, and you'll get a neural implant that we can put in your brain with like a little, tip of a injection that costs almost nothing and doesn't feel like anything. It's painless. And within minutes, we're going to be able to slow down Alzheimer. And if you have this particular gene or this particular thing, it's going to be a life-saving thing. And you're going to say, oh my God, it's amazing. And then in the end, it will say something like, if this causes you to give your thoughts to someone else and have your decisions made by a machine, please contact a doctor. That's going to be the thing, because that's what's going to happen. You're going to get the device and it will fix Alzheimer, but you're also going to open a gateway into your memories. And you might be hackable by a hostile entity, or you might actually give that away for free because you go to a website and it says, if you want to get a really, really good Google Map navigation, click here to accept cookies in your brain. And everyone's going to say accept cookies, or there's going to be a huge license agreement that says, like, by pressing accept here, you agree to have your thoughts downloaded into Elon Musk systems. Press yes, and people are going to press yes. And before long, you agreed to something that is there. And people will see the benefit. You want to navigate your car and easily find the location without even having to type the address. Just like you think, I want to get to grandma, and you just know that you need to make a left turn and right turn because it's in your brain, because someone asked the question, where does grandma live? How do you get there faster with less, traffic jams? And you just know the answer, you just feel it. Or you would talk to your friend and you would argue, who won the NBA finals, and you wouldn't have to kind of say, wait, let me think, and you close your eyes and kind of ruminate. But what happened actually is that your brain goes and asks Wikipedia, who won in 1989 the NBA finals? The answer is going to come and say, yes, it came to me. Like it was Jordan's Chicago Bulls. And you would know that like you kind of trying to remember actually outsourced the memory to a different system that came back. Those are all advantages, and they're going to be what you see on the commercial on TV or on your virtual reality or hologram in a couple of years. And the disclaimers are going to be what I'm just saying right now, which is the thought that you asked about the NBA finals will be shared not just with Wikipedia, but also with NBA.com. And immediately after, you're going to start seeing ads for like NBA t-shirts and memberships of this thing. And the same way will be other things. And this will be not your cookies or your phone, it will be your thoughts.
Yeah, but isn't neuromarketing almost a similar thing? Because wouldn't it also be kind of manipulating your customers? And if you see that maybe this is not the right approach, as a neuroscientist, what do you think could be the approach?
So now I'm going to flip sides. I'm on that camp. I support doing this. But I'll say neuromarketing is similar to like what social media was to marketing before. It's scaling it up. It bypasses the need to talk to us. It's kind of like going straight from the brain. It's not surprising. It's basically all of those things I'm talking about right now existed 100 years ago. It's just different technologies. So marketing and nudging and manipulation, they wear different dresses, but it's the same thing. Like this is what leaders back in the 1910s, 20s, 30s, and 40s were trying to do. They try to rally the masses and move them around. They try to understand what people want and give it to them. They try to use fear tactics to make that. All of those things are the same. We see technology and we think, okay, it's new because it was never done this way before. But it was done a different way, but with the same aim and with the same kind of psychological mechanisms before. So nudging is a new name for an old thing, which is how do I convince people to vote for me or to buy my products or to change their behavior? In that sense, I think nothing is new. Neuromarketing, marketing, social media, neural implants, ads on TV, they're all kind of versions of the same thing at different scales with different resolutions, which is a big difference. But it's also, as a framework, not big. We just kind of find new ways to do that thing, which also means that we don't know what the next one is. Maybe the next technology is going to be a better version of, accessing your thoughts and behaviors and changing them, which is there. Now, I think you ask me constantly to take an opinion on like good and bad, and I'm kind of picking based on the question side, which only is a way for me to reflect that I'm torn. So last time I was on the bad, on the it's bad. Let me give you why it's good. I think that solving Alzheimer is a good enough reason to take a risk on having our thoughts accessed. Not so much navigating Google, but Alzheimer. And I do believe that having those ways by which we can access the brain is going to uncover not just stronger potentials of the individuals, but of society. I think a cure for cancer exists. Biologically, we can cure cancer. Like there is a solution to that. We know roughly where to look somehow, but something like the telomeres could be changed so they could actually not generate cancer. We know that that's kind of the lenses, but we have not found it. And there's too many types of cancer that we feel that we can't find like a general solution. So we kind of try to find one at a time. Somewhere in the world lies a solution. And the question right now is our brain capable of finding the solution and kind of making use of that? It seems that we're not doing a good job right now with the current brain, but now we're being offered a better brain. Maybe the better brain is going to find the answer. Would you not sign up on that? Yes, I would sign up on that. And especially if you're the person who's suffering from cancer, you would give up a lot of data and a lot of things for the thing to happen. So this tension can somewhat depend on what state you are in life and what state the world is, makes a big difference. Last year, the corona is a good example. If when it started and the world was in dire stress and fear, if someone came and said, like, there's a pill that you can take, it will make you smart enough to come up with a vaccine in 2 hours and save thousands of people, hundreds of people from dying at all the risks that we said in your previous answer, I don't know if I myself wouldn't say, take it, give up data and save those people's lives. And I think this tension is what I want the audience to live with. If they immediately gravitate to, if they immediately say, oh, yes, I want it, then they're making a mistake. If they immediately say, oh, no, I don't want it, they're making a mistake. What they should be is in this Zen-like state where you constantly see the good and the bad, and you, for every choice, weigh the pros and cons and make a decision, but also a collectively make a decision could lead to at least a solution that the majority of those people are going to be better.
As a neuroscientist, how much do you think that we know of the brain today? And what do you think will happen once we know the entire brain? And with that, maybe you could also talk about neuromodulation and deep brain stimulation and healthcare and how is it benefiting today?
Okay, very big questions. I feel like I'm giving a long monologue because they're so big, but I'll try my best to even speak about all of those things, but in very few words. How much do we know of the brain? I think that we made a big leap in the last 10 years to the point that we basically, it's like, it could be that we're like in a quantum physics versus a mechanical physics, that we think that we know everything other than two things, and then we'll discover that those two things are basically the roots of all of modern physics. This could be that. So then I would have to eat my words or be gone down in history as the person who people use quote in 1800. This guy said we're almost ready to know everything. But I would say the following: I say there's like two teams that work in parallel, and one of them advances slow and one of them advances fast. The team that advances slow is neuroscientist. The team that advances really, really fast is engineers. So neuroscientists will find how using one microelectrode in the brain, we can read the thoughts of a neuron and maybe get access to your memory. So we can say, hey, we found in Eddie's brain one memory that we can read perfectly. And engineer would say, okay, so now we know that electrode in the brain next to this neuron gets your electrode. Now let's be 1 million. And 2 months after, you have like a machine that reads memories. We say, oh, we can actually read Eddie's dreams when he's asleep by looking at his brain waves when he's asleep and having machine learning code with a human, analyze it and predict with some probability that he's in REM sleep, and then we can actually extract the thoughts. So maybe we can read a dream to some extent. A week after, engineers open 10 companies in Silicon Valley that are all after dream recording. So I'm on the camp of neuroscience that moves slower and is mostly concerned about like proof of concepts. I think that in the last 10 years, primarily, but kind of it's exponential. So every 10 years, if you take it, like you'll find a lot more than before. We essentially got a big step towards understanding the language of the brain. So if you try to find a parallel, in the same place where biology was in 1953. Someone said, okay, now we understand this double helix thing is the code of life. This is how it works. We know the language of this, and we also can kind of suggest what it explains and so on. That's cool. In the 70 years since, we basically moved from understanding to replicating the sheep Dolly, to talking about like bringing back the woolly mammoth to life that got extinct, to having Neanderthals be born again, to having babies without a womb. Like, we're talking about like this wasn't on the horizon in 1953 when Francis Crick and James Watson said we understood how life works. That's, I think, where we are with neuroscience. The last 10 years, we understood that the code of the brain is neurons firing and synapses collecting data in chemical molecule. We know roughly what are the types of neurons that we can look into. We know signal. And this gives us ability to read a memory, decode a thought, predict a decision, which is cool. And now we're moving it from neuroscientists to engineers. We're going to spend the next 70 years making it into the parallel of engineering babies and the CRISPR and so on for brains, which I think will amount to building brains, connecting brains to machines and so on. But none of that is right now happening because they're waiting for us to say, okay, that's the way. And then they're going to run with it. And I think I often get asked about engineering, like how soon do you think will there be a company that can read your dreams? And I say we already did it. With one person in the lab under the perfect conditions, we showed we can read dreams. So in that sense, the answer is already happened. But you want it next to your Alexa, actually giving you access to your dreams, and that's an engineering issue, and they're after that.
Right. Yeah, so this entire dreams thing is so fascinating. So my entire family, we have this recurrent dream which is runs through my brother and my sister. So we get this dream that we running through this open space. Somebody is trying. There's a bunch of people who are following us, and as soon as they come close, we fly and then again we land and again they're coming close, and this recurrent dream and this dreams at times it gets so realistic that it's you feel that the dream is real. For example, I mean, when you have this dream where they're making out with a beautiful girl, and you're so into the dream that you feel that the woman is over there and you actually come. The reason I'm poking onto these is because I'm vested in virtual reality. And over there, we have breached of visual and audio to the T. We can actually manipulate visual, the entire 360 degrees visual, plus the audio exactly the way we humans hear, spatial or ambisonic sound. Now, with haptic feedback, we have also breached where we can simulate your touch and feel. Do you think that eventually we will be able to simulate all of our five senses? Because with virtual reality, we all talk about this full dive virtual reality, something that the entire world could be physically simulated. I'm going bonkers over here, but but with virtual reality, there's this full dive VR is where you can actually simulate the entire world, where you won't be able to distinguish between what is virtual and what is physical. As a neuroscientist, do you think that we could someday go to a point where we'll be able to simulate all of our five senses?
So, because again, it was a long question, I feel like I can pick different topics, like talk about dreams, talk about senses, talk about experiences. I'll try to answer all of them, but tell me if I miss something. So, I would go about it this way. There's a continuum. There's on which, on one hand, lies reality. That's what is actually out there. Then there's a secondary thing, which is what we perceive as reality. There are things out there that we don't perceive. There are waves of light that we don't see, like gamma rays and X-rays. They are real. We just don't see them with our eyes. So already there's a subsampling of reality into what our eyes or noses or skin can detect. Then there's a third layer, which is what we can think. So your brain is bombarded with a lot of tactile experiences. And it doesn't really say, I just felt a billion things, that's what happens. It collapses and it says, I'm feeling cold. So all your skin sensors are aggregated in the brain into one feeling, which is, I'm feeling cold. So the reality, what you sense, what you feel in your brain, those are one thing, which is, we call this reality, but actually it's important to say that it's a pyramid and reality is a fraction of what's actually out there. Now comes the other side of that, which is you want to simulate that. So in the brain, we know that there are some parts of the brain that kind of are the ones that turn up and down when you see your mom or when you talk to me on this podcast. And we can bypass the entire system that I mentioned before, the senses and the perception, by just figuring out that in your brain, there's one cell that when it lights up, you think of your mom. So I can just zap this cell and you will see your mom in your mind's eye. And I just kind of eliminated all of the ways to get in. I just got straight to the vault and turned it on. In that sense, we can create a sensory experience using this way. And on the other channel to the same location, you can think of dreams, virtual reality, or immersive technologies. They're all trying to get the same thing. They're trying to activate the mother neuron, the neuron that codes mom, just instead of getting there through one way, they're trying to get another one. They kind of try to trick the senses into thinking that mom is there by knowing how the senses work and basically creating an optical illusion that makes us think that she's there, but it's a kind of plain graphical images. It could be on your eyes or on a screen in front of you that is kind of requires a little bit of effort from your brain to kind of imagine that you're in the movie rather than just having it on your eyes, to the in-between approach, which is dreams. Dreams are already sitting in your brain. Your eyes are closed. but they kind of override the channel and they say, okay, we're going to need to activate mom's cell. Instead of coming from the eyes, let's just come from within and make it. At the end of that onion always lies the mom cell, the cell that is coding your mom. It's confusing term, mom cell, because you don't think like maybe it's like a unique cell that codes. Let's call it the, I don't know, water glass. I have one here, water glass cell that codes the concept of water glass. So that's the thing that we want to activate. So whether we get there through your dreams, to virtual reality, to immersive technology, to the senses, we're all ending up in the same place. And on that sense, I think that we're kind of playing with a dial here of when VR gets really, really good, we're impressed by VR. Dreams are seemingly for our brain, when they happen, as real as it gets. I think there's a Freud quote that says, dreams are real while they last. Can we say more about life? Which is also just an activation of those neurons. As long as you're alive and you're dead, they don't work anymore. So he pointed out that in that sense, all of life is just turning on and off those neurons from different sources. And I think that sometimes I'm on the camp that VR is the future, because it will become so good that your brain will have a hard time differentiating reality from that. And we're not there yet. Right now, you know that you're on VR experience. Like, it feels very immersive, but you know in the back of your mind you can do this, remove the headset, and you're back in reality. So if you're very scared or if you are done, you can just turn it off. And this knowledge is enough for the brain to be 80% immersed, but not 100% immersed. You don't think it's life. You don't confuse reality with life ever. Like, you always know when you're in which. It works in very much the same way, but there's a limit. Dreams are 90%, because when you dream, you really do think it's life. It's confusing. It's unclear what's going on there, and you forget them. So it's less kind of valuable, if you want, for the awake me, much more valuable for the sleeping me. But at least when they happen, you think it's reality. There's reality, which when it happens, you know you're in reality, but you think that it's the full reality, and even that's not 100%. So in that sense, I think that we kind of constantly play with them. As neuroscientists get better in controlling dreams, for a while, I think they're going to have the glamorous years, where everyone's going to want to ditch the virtuality and say, give me the dream control machine that allows you to dream. And then at some point, VR is going to trump that and become the best thing, and it will look like as real as it gets. Like, it's going to be PlayStation 10, which is going to be VR looking like life, and people are going to get to play basketball with LeBron James. Suddenly they feel, oh my God, like, that's much better, because in dreams I'm confined by the things that my brain comes up with, and now I can get what Electronic Arts thought would be a good NBA game. Only have that, and then dreams again, and then a third technology. So we're in a world where those tensions come up. What's important to understand is that they all are after the same thing, which is a neuron codes this water glass activity, which we are neuroscientists getting good and pinpointing.
Earlier in the conversation, you were mentioning about this dream thing that what you've been researching on. Would you like to talk a little bit about that? And where is our memory encoded or stored? Would we in the near future be able to capture that memory and possibly visualize it?
The question basically is how memories work. I think if you think of the cell as the atom of cognition in the brain, the neuron, for every memory, there's a collection of somewhere between hundreds of thousands to few millions, 5 million, let's say, neurons that code everything you know. So if you talk about a water glass and you have a thought in your mind, it means something to you, then it means that when I presented to you the water glass, about 2 million neurons in your brain, scattered in various locations, not always in the same location, but in the right vicinity, all started firing. The brain's coding of water glasses is that when a collection of neurons fires at the same time, the brain says, aha, this pattern is indicative that a water glass should be rising in our mind. That is what it means to rise in our mind. A different set of cells is the cells that code a Coca-Cola glass or a Pepsi glass. And there might be some overlaps. It might be that some of the 5 million neurons that code Pepsi also code cola, but not all of them. Otherwise, it would be the same memory. So each neuron could actually be part of multiple clusters, and they code different thoughts. And in this way, the brain is organized well how memories work, to the point that we first can put electrodes near a single neuron and show you various images and see that when you see the image of a water glass, this neuron lights up and you realize it's part of the cluster that codes water glasses, and you're very accurate in looking at it. So you can know that every time this neuron fires, there's a probability the person is thinking about water glasses right now. So you can just read their minds and predict what they're thinking. And it also is true for things that you don't have a visual for necessarily, but you have a concept for. We have a set of neurons in our brain for democracy. A vague concept. You don't really see democracy in your mind when you think about it, but you know what it is, and I know what it is, and we can actually talk about that as if it's a real thing that you can wear or eat. And in that sense, if you have a name for that, you have a cluster of neurons for that. You have cells that code democracy, you have cells that code love, another abstract content. You have cells that code the word abstract content. Something that I just said that like is in itself meta confusing, there are cells for it. So everything that is a memory has a cell. Where I think it plays into what you just said before, is that if I had access to your brain at the resolution of neurons, I could, in the morning when you're awake, show you one after the other pictures of a lot of things. The Eiffel Tower in France, the pyramids in Giza, the Big Ben in London, just like buildings. And at some point, I'm going to hit a building, let's say the Big Ben in London, that will activate a cell in your brain. And I say, oh, wait, there's one thing that activates a cell. Maybe it's a cell that codes buildings. Maybe it's called things in London. Maybe it's called the Big Ben. Let's try other things in London. Doesn't light up. Other big buildings, doesn't light up. The Big Ben again, lights up. Okay, we think we narrowed it to finding the cell that codes the concept of a Big Ben in London. And now we have one. So we kind of put in our atlas, this cell, Big Ben in London. And then we start showing you other pictures and we look and find this cell codes the pyramids in Giza, and this one called the Eiffel Tower and the Statue of Liberty. And we start kind of mapping them, and we actually potentially find out that they're all in similar location, because in the brain, all big landmarks maybe are in the same roughly brain region. So we actually found the brain region, so to speak, that codes landmarks, and then we can start finding other landmarks and assume that we're going to find them there. But the point, as the answer to your question, is that once we found those, we can have you close your eyes and tell you, imagine any landmark that you know. And you will imagine Mount Rushmore in the US, and we will see a cell lighting up and we will know what you're imagining. We don't need you to tell us. You don't need to say anything. You have it in your mind's eye. We have it on our computer. And if we have a big enough computer that has access to a lot of those neurons, you can sit there and have a conversation entirely. And we will know before you say it, what you're about to say, before you're thinking what you're about to think, so much so that we can actually predict your actions, predict your thoughts, visualize them, show a movie of what you're thinking about right now. Or if you're asleep, show your dreams. That's kind of the technology. I hope it wasn't too boring, the mechanics of how it works.
There are people who are working on whole brain emulation. There's this guy called Randall Coney who's working on whole brain emulation. In fact, there's this team of scientists who kind of mapped out a C. elegans worm, the data, and put it on a connectome project. Then there was these researchers from UCLA who were able to transfer memories of being shocked from one snail to another snail. So do you see mind uploading being a possibility there of a human in maybe in the near future?
Already happening. For neuroscientists, engineers are going to need to now scale it up and make it work. So in the lab, there's been labs that show how you can actually take memory from one rat and move it to another rat. They had one rat basically trained to navigate a maze, and come rat 2 that's never seen this maze, and you stimulate its brain in the right pattern, and suddenly it goes to the maze and it knows how to navigate the maze. We basically know how to take a rat that has memories and essentially listen or eavesdrop on those memories while the rat is okay, and then induce Alzheimer. So the rat's memories decline, and then we take out the faulty parts and we put back a neural device that has all the previous memories in action, and the rat goes back to baseline, as in the memories are restored. So we show the proof of concept that we can actually get you back memories that you lost. To an extent, there are now studies that look at keeping your memories out of your brain and putting them back in. So all of those things have been tested. They look, the headline on the news is impressive. Usually the details are a little more nuanced. So, the headline would be, scientists copy memories from one rat to another. In practice, it's only the memories of navigating a maze. It's after a lot of work. It's kind of like a little less glamorous, but the bottom line, I think, from the perspective of our listener, is that it's true. That we are able to download memories and copy memories and slow down the decay of memories. And once we did that, there are now a variety of things we need to try to see kind of how to control this thing and not just like make it work one time in Antarctica in the perfect conditions. But this also means that we're moving it away from my lab to the lab of the engineers across the street and tell them, okay, it works. Now try it in blue and in green and in red, in hot temperature and cold temperature, with many people, with one person and so on, and basically give me a working device. So we've got that. And it came first by us understanding about 10 years ago how memories work all together, how to slow them down from being decaying or eliminate them if we want to. So kind of the two, and then how we can control them. And I guess because I said that we should end with a positive note, let me use that slide into a positive ending to that kind of stream of consciousness. My aim in this podcast was to do two things. One is to kind of share with you new things that we're working on. And I think I touched the tip of the iceberg. There really are so many things. We touched on briefly dreams. I do tons of things on dreams. That could be an entire podcast on dreams. We touched on neuromarketing. I do tons of things on marketing, and I just gave you a kind of a glimpse of what we're doing in marketing. And there's also finance and decision making and economics and accounting and other fields, management, like hiring, so many. And then you asked me about cybersecurity, and I just thought I left this field entirely and recently got back to it. And we work with governments as well as people on trying to think of how to make yourself better. So on each topic, there's a lot more. And this is where I want to kind of leave the audience wanting. I think that my aim is not to make you feel, okay, there's never a way I can kind of take over this field because there's so much there that I've never understood and so on, but the opposite. It took us so little time to get so much. 2 years ago, if you ask me about dreams, I would say we don't know anything. We still are in the same place we were 100 years ago, where Freud was saying that if you dreamt about this being chased, it means that you want to sleep with your mom and kill your dad. That was the level of sophistication we had not long ago, 2 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. In 5 years, people who knew as much as they know right now about dreams as in nothing, and listened to it, said like, oh my God, I basically created a new field. And that is where I wanted to leave your audience. If you hear this right now and you say, oh, this is interesting, but I guess Elon Musk is already doing that, so there's no point. You're wrong. Elon Musk, too, did not know anything about it 7 years ago. And then 6 years ago, he learned, and then 5 years ago, he started a company, and 4 years ago, the company took off, and a year ago, he already acts like an expert in that field. And you think, okay, too late for me. The opposite. What I want every person who listens to this podcast to take is that there are a lot of mushrooms growing in many, many locations, but they're in a stage where if you're an interested person and you have an opinion and you're willing to give the time, which isn't a lot, call me or call your local neuroscientist and tell us I'm in. You will find that the ground is ripe for you to join. There are many questions that are unanswered still that are fascinating, that a neuroscientist will immediately say, yeah, we have this question that you can just take over right away. And within 6 months, you're going to be the person who knows most on a topic that a year ago we thought no one knows anything, and you're going to be on this podcast instead of me talking about dreams and neuromarketing and cybersecurity. So my kind of final call to the audience is, if you care, Google neuroscientist near me, find their email and say, I want to help. You will find that they need you. There are more problems than we can take on ourselves, and you will be part of the most interesting thing right now in my mind in academia. So big promise, but I truly hope. I hope it was helpful, and thank you so much for
Thank
having me.
Thank you, sir. Really appreciate you taking time being part of the podcast. Yes, I think we're living in fantastic times, and yes, you said in 2 years' time we have made some drastic changes, but obviously we need to kind of like figure out which camp is doing the right thing and which camp isn't, because there is so much hype around the world at this point in time. It really gets, because there is so much off content, it gets very difficult to kind of choose in what to kind of filter in and accept and make yours, but thank you for being part of the podcast. Really appreciate it. To my listeners, if you like what you see in here, please press the subscribe button. Until next time, see you guys. Bye-bye. Thank you,
Eddie. It was a pleasure.